Time now to take the political pulse of America. And the beat today, you ask? Well, it would be even after the release of millions of newly unsealed documents tied to the late Jeffrey Epstein. A new Rasmussen Reports survey finds that a majority of likely voters still see drama, secrecy, and unanswered questions. According to the poll, 54% of respondents say that they believe there's a cover-up by government officials to hide President Trump's alleged involvement with Jeffrey Epstein. This includes 40% of likely voters who believe a cover-up is very likely. However, another 40% do not believe the Trump administration and Trump administration officials are involved in a cover-up. 26% say a cover-up is not likely at all. All of this follows a massive release of files related to the disgraced sex trafficker by the Department of Justice. Despite that release, though, many voters remain skeptical, with many believing they are still being lied to. Joining us now with the reaction is the managing editor for the Daily Signal and the author of the book, The Woktopus, Tyler O'Neill, joining us this morning. Tyler, good to see you as always, my friend. Do these respondents have a point there? And is the administration to some degree responsible for this reaction, given the way it handled the releases of these documents?
Yeah, good morning, Terrence. I think that what we're seeing with the Epstein scandal here is that we've known for forever that Epstein was horrible news. And the interesting aspect here is that Trump knew, and Trump distanced himself from Epstein long ago. So there was some involvement that that at the time he was not the president had. And, I think we have seen a tremendous amount of transparency from this administration regarding all of these files that they've been releasing. But there are so many different issues at play here. So right now, as we're talking, we also have a lot of drama with the Clintons testifying about these same issues. And the Epstein scandal has pulled down a lot of very famous and influential people. And if you look at what the involvement with Trump was, it's a very limited thing compared to when you're looking at situations like Prince Andrew, when you're looking at, Bill Clinton. And there are questions that need to be answered across the political spectrum. I think this Department of Justice has been taking tremendous strides to reveal the truth that the American people have been wanting for a long time. I also think there are a lot of people whose names had to be redacted because there isn't wrongdoing in association with them. And so, you have to balance these two competing interests. I think it would have been better from the beginning if we had heard from the Justice Department and the Trump administration that we have competing interests here. And instead we had this almost kicking the ball, it was like Lucy with the football. And this is a scandal that, we had previously. It is very interesting. I always go back to the fact that if there were a tremendous smoking gun with Trump and Epstein, I find it very hard to believe that the previous administration would not have revealed it.
Tyler, I can guarantee you we're not going to hear about the Epstein files at the State of the Union speech tomorrow.
Oh, yes.
That's for sure. And speaking of that, of course, he is set to deliver it at 7 p.m. It's at 9 p.m. But we'll start our coverage here, by the way, at 7 p.m. called The Real State of the Union. We have Vice President J.D. Vance talking about it, kind of previewing it. Take a look at what he had to say.
You're going to hear a lot about the importance of bringing jobs back into our country, of reshoring manufacturing, of all these great factories that are being built. But when they turn on and you're hiring thousands of American workers per factory, that's when the real Trump boom, I think, starts. I think he's going to talk about regulatory change, the importance of lowering energy prices for American citizens, because, if you lower a person's gas bill or you lower a person's electricity bill, that's good because they're paying less money for gas and electricity. But it also means the farmer who's taken the food to the grocery store, that price goes down because the farmer's paying less for gas and electricity too. So you'll hear a lot about the Trump energy boom, which is very powerful. We've got record low energy prices, and that's a very good thing to point to.
So Tyler, here's the problem, I think, for Trump. He's a really positive guy. And I've written books about, or a book about him, and he talks about a lot about the power of positive thinking from Norman Vincent Peale, his former pastor. This is what he thinks about all the time. He always has a way of figuring things out and getting to yes, and he refuses to be negative. The problem is that if you've got certain voters out there, certain folks that are not feeling what he is saying, there becomes a disconnect. And I think that's his biggest challenge because, he's always like, it's fine, it's great, it's going to be wonderful. But you know what? If people aren't feeling it, that can be a problem, Tyler.
Yeah, I agree. I think what we have on the ground in the economic situation in our country right now is actually many positive indicators. Inflation has cooled substantially. And if you look at real wages, they're outpacing inflation, which means that, thank goodness, Americans finally have more money in our wallets that goes further than it did during those horrible Biden years with the inflation that we had from government overspending. Also, that deregulation piece is huge. President Trump just took a wrecking ball to the worst of the EPA's decisions. That was called it's a greenhouse gas rule, and it effectively said it was called the endangerment finding. This was the centerpiece of the EPA's regulation on greenhouse gases, and now that has been removed, which means that we are looking at a very likely energy boom in this country with declining gas prices, and that's going to bring the prices of all sorts of goods and services down as our economy is unshackled from these regulations. But I also agree with you. I think America is very divided right now. You have a movement of hatred against ICE and against law enforcement. This constant demonization in some of these blue states, you have neo-Confederate rhetoric. And I think President Trump needs to address the rising scourge of leftist violence. I mean, we saw the assassination of Charlie Kirk last year. This year, and I wrote this story before we had that gunman who got shot at Mar-a-Lago over the weekend, there had been at least 10 people arrested or charged for threatening members of the Trump administration in the first less than 2 months of this year alone. And so that includes, the man who showed up to Vice President Pence's house and the man who is casing the house of OMB Director Russ Vought. And these threats are significant. That's why why these people are facing charges for them. So on the one hand, yes, Americans are feeling better, and I think there is positive news on the economy that we can look forward to this year. But Trump also has to address the many concerns that Americans have, concerns about what's happening with Iran, concerns about his immigration strategy. I think he needs to continue the mass deportations.
Right.
But what we saw from Minneapolis, we have to figure out what the plan is going forward. And I think President Trump needs to address those issues, needs to provide the roadmap, and needs to really address this specter of leftist violence.
Tyler, I do want to change gears here. Minnesota pastor Jonathan Parnell, who was attempting to read from the Bible when agitators disrupted his service, is speaking out about the incident now. The pastor described the event as a flash mob, recalling that several individuals broke in shouting, "Hands up, don't shoot," leading many worshipers to flee, believing it was an active shooter situation. Former CNN anchor Don Lemon has pled not guilty for his involvement with the incident. Want to get your thoughts on this? I mean, this is America, and we're seeing situations like this happen. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, this invasion of a church service was extremely egregious. I think it is it's a very positive development that the Justice Department has filed charges to protect the First Amendment rights of those who gathered at their church to worship on a Sunday morning. And we've heard a lot of defenses of Don Lemon saying he was a journalist, he was protected by the First Amendment. But I think the lawyer for the church made an excellent point when she said that the First Amendment does not, the freedom of the press does not give you carte blanche to disrupt a church service and to accost people in the middle of it. And what we saw from Don Lemon from the beginning, he was strategizing with the organizers of this invasion. He knew the location of the church. He knew that they were going to disrupt business as usual. And if you ask me, that's a clear intent to interfere with someone's First Amendment rights. Now, this situation, the pastor has finally opened his mouth on this, and he said that Don Lemon was in on the terror. Those are his words.
Right.
And I think if you look at the videos, you can't but come to the realization that this was effectively terror unleashed in a church.
Absolutely, and it's going to be decided now in the courts. Tyler O'Neill, always good to talk to you, my friend. Thanks so much for being here with us.
Thanks again for having me.